So I would like the panelists just to start presenting themselves. We start from Shirley, and then we get more deeply into discussion. I will ask questions. And here is the really professionals from the Web3 industry who are dealing with this subject on a regular daily basis.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shirley. I'm Chief of Growth at Partisia Blockchain Foundation for the past 3 months. In the crypto space past 6 to 7 years, and originally coming from Estonia, which is actually using private blockchain for nearly or over 20 years now, and adopted digital identity end of 90s. So looking forward to the panel.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Kai from Litentry. So I originally came from a more traditional field, which is automobile field. And then I was fascinated by the blockchain technology and also attracted by the idea of the founder of the Litentry. And then I spent more time diving into this identity field as well as leading the technical development at Litentry. So we are basically focusing on the aggregation and privacy side of the identity. Yeah, I'm glad to share some thoughts here. I'm also looking forward to learning from each other. I think there have been great talks, inspirational speeches, discussions. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Hey, I'm Alex Ray. I'm CEO and founder of Albus protocol. We are doing on-chain KYC and trying to bring the digital identity in ZK form to the blockchain, to the Web3 world, to make them more compliant.
Hi, my name is Ilya Brodin. I'm Chief Growth Officer at SumSub. We are probably in crypto the largest KYC and identity provider, working with over 1,000 crypto clients, so from small wallets to the largest exchanges, onboard people globally. Probably soon will be 10 million per month. So we know quite a bit about identity, but and I will talk about this. Majority of what we do for now is, I would call it even Web 2.0, even though there's a crypto clients, there's a very still Web 2.0 way of doing this, and we can talk about how that links into Web 3.
Okay, I'm Merighe. I'm the CTO of Veritise. At Veritise, we are bringing back trust, building this ecosystem of identities, considering identity not just people and companies, but everything that needs to be verified, like an information, a product, and all kinds of things we need to make sure that in the online world, we can bring trust. So I am originally from Brazil. I've been working with identity, with biometrics, and many large projects on this area for a very long time, for about 20 years working on that. And I started making this cross between identity and blockchain in 2016. So it's been from the early days working on this field. So I'm looking forward to discuss the next steps and how we can accelerate everything we are doing in this industry right now.
Great. I think that we have such a great professionals team that first I would like maybe to ask audience, do you know what self-sovereign identity mean? Okay, good. And zero knowledge proof? Good. Okay, then we have a professional team here as well in the room. Let's have a debate.
That's good.
And I would suggest that maybe if you have a questions during discussions, you can also raise a hand. I want us to be more proactive. So self-sovereign identity, where we are, what do you think the future will be? I know that many different governments discussing, community discussing it, but do we really have any use case somewhere? So just Anna, what is your experience with implication of the self-sovereign identity in real life today?
Yeah, that's basically, I think it starts with the concept you mentioned in the beginning of our discussion. So we cannot be naive to think that everything is fully decentralized, because as you said, when we are born, we have a centralized body that's saying who we are. Actually, so, and then when we move for the online world, what we need to do is we need to guarantee that this online to offline parity is correct. So we need to guarantee that person in the offline world is the same person you're speaking online, so you can guarantee that what's going on there, it's based on trust. The challenge is, when we think about the decentralization, is from the moment you can guarantee, like from KYC when it's well done and all the other channels you can use. So from the moment this is guaranteed, so then this person should be able to choose what you want to disclose online from the moment you are verified, so you can choose which kind of information you're going to share. So that's the main concept of the decentralization in this.
So how do you feel about future of the other participants? What do you think about, will we be able to choose what information we give in the next, let's say, 5-10 years?
Look, from my point of view, I'll just say that majority of what we do is actually not Web3.
Yeah.
And I think, yesterday I heard a statistic that 10% of trading volume happens on DeFi exchanges, 90% is centralized. So we're still living in a world where the technology exists. I mean, it's really cool. The things that you can do, that you can prove, it actually does work. What it doesn't work for yet, from a regulatory point of view, the governments and the regulators don't yet recognize it for the particular purpose of complying with regulations. So I think there is still kind of a way to cross from what is being done today, according to today's laws, and then how that transforms into technology that is also accepted for use cases, risk profiles, jurisdictions, and all that. So I think we're in the beginning of the journey, and I think we as a community can sort of help pave the way.
Yeah. We've been advancing, and we're going to talk about it, right, on this aspect.
So Web2 is now, we're using Web2, but how we can move to the next step? And Alexander, what do you think about when we will be able to use Web3? And from the private sector, of course, people want to have more choice, but from the regulator level, do you see any possibility to convince that we can really gradually transfer into the different setup of how the data are used and who is controlling the data?
Yes and no. Also for now, let's go a step back. As a self-sovereign identity is a concept that's not about Web2 or Web3. It's about how you control your data, that you own your data and have full control about how it distributed around the world. If it's possible to use the self-sovereign identities concept in the Web3 world, of course it can be used. Of course we can distribute our data in form of some data pieces over Web3 on-chain, create some oracles which proves some properties of the persons in behind the self-sovereign identity. The properties and the proofs, they can be ZK proofs, that means they can prove something without to disclose the data, or non-ZK proofs as well. So now that the ZK is not accepted from the regulators at all, they don't understand what is it and how it can be used for the compliance proofs. But I think it will move forward into the next years. Some solution which can make happy the regulators and Web3 projects, DeFi projects, and the customers, the users of the DeFi will be liberated.
So actually it's about technology and adaptation.
That's about the technology and about the legal framework.
Yeah.
So that means we need to work on the technology and we need to work on the legal framework. We need to convince the regulators. At first we need to explain them what's about and where are the differences in between the regular compliance flow and the flow that we're using self-sovereign identity or ZK or some proofs, on-chain proofs or off-chain proofs or whatever.
Maybe let's ask Kai. I know you understand good and zero knowledge proof and more advanced steps in the identification. So maybe explain us a bit more, because not probably everyone understand what does it mean and where we are going with this. And then we will talk about regulation a bit and yeah.
Sure. I mean, zero knowledge proof itself, it means that you prove a statement is true, but you're only revealing the information that a statement is true. I think it's a bit confusing at the first thing, but maybe I could could explain it by a concrete example. Like, imagine that we are not at a bar. We are on a square where hundreds of thousands of people are sitting there, and you and I have a common friend, Alice, and we both know that she's sitting among them. And I want to convince to you that I know where Alice is. So what I do, so I ask you to close your eyes. I give you a telescope. I set the telescope so that it's directed to Alice, and I trick the telescope so that when you look through the telescope, you can only see Alice, but no one else. So everything else is black. And then I ask you to open your eyes. You open your eyes, you see Alice is there. So that's a way of explaining zero knowledge proof, because I show you I own the knowledge of where Alice is, but you don't know, but you still don't know where she is, right? So you only know that I possess this knowledge. I think that's the most important thing about the zero knowledge proof. And when it comes to identity, I think that's a perfect match for identity, because identity is basically a bunch of credentials. It's about who you are. It's about what have you done. So those are all proofs. So imagine that you can prove such things without actually telling the third party how you fight all the way to get this achievement, or even the underlying actual identity information. That'd be great.
Great. So
can I add to that?
Please, please.
Zero knowledge proofs are a great first step, but there are some limitations which Partisia is solving. So the advanced form of zero knowledge proofs is multi-party computation, which is also a form of zero knowledge computation. And Partisia is solving the problem that currently with zero knowledge proofs, you can only use the input and data of one user only, or one citizen. And you can either prove it if it's false or truth, or if the person is above a certain age or not. So either yes or no. But with MPC, multi-party computation, you can use even hundreds or thousands of different data sets of different users and have very complex outcomes. So we're able to provide much wider use cases, at the same time keeping that data private and not exposing it.
You all talking about data, and we had a lot of discussions this week, but still, who is owning the data? How can say that it's distributed the way that it's not controlled by one authorities, or who gives the permission to use the data? So if I have my data, what's the guarantee that nobody can steal this data? So just let's talk about it. Where we are, and from regulatory point of view, do we have any, progress with the regulators? So this is I think it's a key question, where the data is stored, right? And who have access to this data?
So with the MPC, it's also a form of distributed computing, meaning that single MPC node holds the whole data set or the whole secret. So the secret is spread between different MPC nodes. So this is protecting from one party having the whole truth. And in case of self-sovereign identities, the user can be in possession of its data on a personal hardware like mobile phone, or there are solutions that are being built which enable fully distributed, decentralized network where the data is stored and also protected by MPC.
You are from Estonia. Do you have some use cases with self-sovereign identity and distribution of data, or it's all owned by the government?
Yeah, in Estonia it's a bit very Web2 still. So it's all in the possession of government. It's distributed between two main servers. One is in Estonia, one is in Luxembourg, just to be protected from any evasion by foreign forces. But it's you have some problems around that kind of data storage, like the single point of failure, or data leaks and hacks. And also the users are not fully in control over the use and monetization and governance of their credentials. But at the same time, government wants to make sure that your data is safe and protected. And in Estonian case, it's not only used in the public sector, they're also collaborating with private sector. And in case of Estonia, each person has its own unique identity code. And you can even connect it with loyalty cards. So we have only one ID card, and you have like 20 to 30 different loyalty memberships, and you can just use your ID card wherever you go in the shops. So it's incorporated even into the private sector. But we at Partisia, we're working with Swiss EID, and we're decentralizing the use and governance of data. So soon they will have complete governance over their own credentials.
Okay, but still it's centralized because
No, this will be decentralized.
it will be decentralized.
Self-sovereign means it's decentralized.
Can I jump in?
Please, please.
As I think it depends, always depends how you store your data and how you handle the data. For example, in our case, we store the data encrypted, this private key, and then is the person which is owning that private key owns the data, similar to the coins. Anyone who is owning the private keys owns the coins. That's same with the data. That means if the data is encrypted and the end customers own the private key, then the data belongs to them.
And can you give some examples where we can use it this way?
I thought that's if it is used in that way, so if the data belongs to the end customer, then you as a business which providing that kind of service, you don't care about GDPR. Because the data belongs to the end customers, the business have nothing to do with that, and end customers can always decide how it will be shared with different entities.
And in which industries you see it will be useful?
It can be used. Also, it can be used in any industry. Also, it's in general Web3, of course. Of course, we are targeting Web3, but that's not about the industry. That's about the data ownership.
Ilya, maybe
I'm fully on board about the values and the virtues of decentralization, full control, and everything. But there's always competing interests, right? You want safety but freedom, right? And sometimes you sacrifice freedom for the sake of safety, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you want convenience, and you sacrifice, again, your identity. That's why people use centralized exchanges. They don't want to, they run the risk of losing their keys or entering the keys every time. So there's always this balance. So I think clearly the tools of Web3 are quite convenient. It seems that for now, all of the use cases are very much sort of MVP, proof of concept. And so you take that, the absence of use cases, real volume use cases, you take the lack of regulation, and that's why for now this is more of almost a theoretical concept. And I think the way we're looking at this, because obviously we see that there's future in this, but we're looking at this. So why do we want to do this? We want smart contracts to check this automatically, but you don't need necessarily decentralized identity for that. You can have centralized identity that is currently compliant, but have a Web3 representation of that identity through a zero knowledge proof or so on, which then works. So even today you can build this. It's kind of crutches a little bit, but still it works. So I think we're still in that space.
Okay, so it's the decentralization versus centralization, but using the new technology and new way how we store data.
Think of it as you have two things. You have the substance, i.e. the identity. It's stored somewhere. It can be stored in a centralized, encrypted way. And think of a wrapper or container or some sort of technology to send that credential, check that credential. That can be decentralized. But there's no sort of religion and necessarily identity itself.
But then it's about certification, yes? Who can prove and who really make sure that the smart contract which is used is properly audited. And let's talk about certification.
Yeah. I think I can add a real use case from one of our products. That's our product authentication solution. That's a patent solution we have that uses the same concept you said, kind of combine what you both were talking about. So our product authentication, for example, and verification, anti-counterfeit protection, work with this double QR code solution. So let's say we're talking about a product. So we create an identity for the product. We have an identity that's KYC and KYB for the companies, for example, for the manufacturer, and for the person that's buying or is receiving or being transferred this new product. So this identity for the product attached to all the information we need in our blockchain. We guarantee that's coming from the manufacturer that was verified in a centralized way, like officially as it has to be done, and the identity of the person as well. And then this product gets like a passport that you can, transfer this everywhere. And we guarantee this, taking those traditional steps and moving this to the digital world. I think that the next step for moving forward, for this to be adopted by governments, to have like to receive this foundation for the confidence for a more reliable step, like you need this foundation. So just change the legal framework. They need to understand that this technology can be trusted, that what you are using can be trusted. I think that's the first step. And then about that, so you can start moving some regulations. So what we've done in France. So together with the Federation of Professionals of the French Federation of Blockchain, Professionals of Blockchain, and AFNOR, which is the official entity body that does all the official certifications, not just in France, but internationally, we define a brand new certification for blockchain. So because we've tried, we wanted to, to provide this assurance to our partners and to our clients, but we couldn't find any certification that was adequate for a decentralized infrastructure and architecture. So we found out that they were building this new certification, and we volunteered to be the first pilot for this step. And we succeeded. We've made the pilot. We received the first certification for it. And we are really happy because in this framework, so everything was verified. So our governance, about how our nodes, our infrastructure is distributed, how our team, makes the decisions, how any incidents, everything is checked by that, not just the technical part. Our code for our blockchain infrastructure was fully audited in terms of security. So once you get to the certification, you know that you are dealing with a certain level of certainty. So, and we were speaking, and we are starting speaking with the government bodies as well. They are interested. They've been working on it. So it is not final. We are still far from changing the legal framework, but I think that's a first step, and we are involving the government on it so they can feel that we are taking steps to make this industry less hectic as we have right now. So we started, it's beautiful when you start innovating. So we have all the, the Wild West thing, so you can do everything. And then we had all the problems we had with the legal problems and with speculation. We have FTX, we had all the problems we had. So the industry needs to get to somewhere in the middle with the balance. And this kind of certification is not to prevent innovation, it's just to, create a framework or something that you can rely on.
But I assume that when you talk about FTX and it's more about financial services, when we have AML compliance, then it's a bit more than just identity. Yes, so I maybe would like to hear first, again, if you have any use cases just for identity, then we can move into the GDPR and AML. And Shirley, please.
I just wanted to add that I agree that we need actually universal standards accepted, and it starts from like the education again, what is the value offer of the Web3 or moving towards the Web3 and self-sovereign identity. And then we need to have all the institutions on board and all the governments on board, because it doesn't provide any value if only one institution accepts it. So, and currently also the technology is in very siloed ecosystems. Like you have different products built on different protocols, but it doesn't scale like this. So in order to have it adopted by the real world businesses, institutions, we need to have kind of...
But do we have like a global institution like FATF, they look after email, yes? And then they check every country, they provide guidance. Can we have something? Because I can't be, even GDPR we have only in Europe. If you look to the across the globe, it's not so well developed, and even Switzerland, which is next door to, we have the same geographical area. It has a bit different data protection law. So the question is how to harmonize it and how to make it scalable. Maybe it should be some pilot with some countries where, like you saying, France has some already experience.
I don't think it's going to synchronize, but I think what you need, and that we, again, have this in the traditional world, we currently have different jurisdictions imposing different requirements.
Exactly.
So the players, and in crypto, obviously, it's borderless, so effectively faced with the necessity to comply with multiple jurisdictions at the same time. And that's the complexity that we'd like, for example, help them solve. But I was also reflecting when you were saying and smiling, because it's interesting that we talk about decentralization and self-sovereign, but the government still remains the source of trust.
Exactly.
You trust it because they vetted the technology and certified it. Now you can trust this in a decentralized way.
It's not that they are vetting, but bringing them on board, in this process of building the standards will make it easier, to bridge this original, that they, by the end of the day, they need to have a legal to be legally valid, they need to.
Yeah.
Kai, do you have something to add here?
That's good discussion. I just want to add that, or reiterate the flexibility and programmability of the blockchain. So when it comes to the privacy and regulation compliance, because it might seem contradictory at the first sight, because we talk about sovereignty identity, which means we give back the control to the users. So the users actually own the data. No one else has the access to the data. But this can be or could be changed, at least from the technical point of view, when it comes to extreme or malicious cases. Like imagine someone in the community, they stole thousands of millions of dollars. Of course, you would expect some authority to investigate into that and really to look into that person's, that criminal's identity. In that way, you could actually change the logic of the blockchain. You could do it, of course, in a decentralized way, which means through on-chain governance, for example, in a democratic way, so that they have the white lists. They have the permission control. They can look into that specific person's identity without affecting other normal users, those non-malicious users' identities. I think that's quite important.
But I just did, in Switzerland, regulation, and it's not only Swiss, it's in Europe for sure, where you have to, as an intermediary, like centralized exchange platform or decentralized but not truly decentralized, you have to keep all data. You can't just say I onboard the client because somebody gives me authority that this person is this person. They have to keep the data, they have to control, and they have to identify the risk for each particular person who is onboarded and trace it and report, like say in Switzerland, it's emeralds, where you have to report if you see suspicious. So it's not like somebody owns data somewhere and we know it's good, but now we don't feel it's good anymore. We have to take this data from somewhere. You have to constantly have them and store in a Swiss server. It's not, if you're SRO regulated, you have to have data in Switzerland, and you're responsible as intermediary for data. So this is where we need a lot of work with regulators enable it.
Actually, technology enables it. Like in our case, we are KYBing every MPC node. MPC node is the node that processes that private confidential data, and we make sure that this data doesn't exit the jurisdiction where it may be only processed. So let's say we're dealing with German citizens' confidential data, then only certain MPC nodes that are operating under German jurisdiction may process it, and all the others are excluded. It's composable up to a use case.
Sounds good. I know, Alexander, you're also working on some solutions in this direction.
Yeah. So at first I want to mention that our protocol supports that kind of disclose possibility. So that means if some of the data need to be stored and disclosed in some cases, then they store the data and distribute the keys in between multiple persons, multiple actors that can be internal compliance officer or that can be trusted handlers outside of the legal entity. In case of legitimate requests from auditors or police or government or whoever, they can combine the keys and disclose the data.
But let's make the difference between what you're describing now and the traditional Web2 compliance. Like in SumSub, you are well known for onboarding and tracing the data of the client. So what's the difference if we talk about new level of the compliance in the Web3, where you see the benefits for the end user?
The benefits for the end user is that the end user, they owns the data, and the data is not disclosed to the third parties immediately. The data will be disclosed to the third parties only upon request. And then we need to see which part of that monitoring, reporting process, and so on can be automated in a kind of cryptographic container, so no one sees the data, and convince the regulators that the same flow. Of course, maybe not of the part of the compliance flow could be implemented that way, but I'm quite confident we can move forward and automate the most of the compliance processes from the traditional AML compliance to the Web3, and that's do it on the decentralized way.
Okay, we say in Switzerland risk-based approach, case by case. So it have to be very smart algorithm to. But Ilya, what do you think? Can we really move to this level with?
But again, I think just to reiterate what I mentioned, because we work with Albus, so we do the Web 2.0 part of it.
Okay.
And fulfill all of the current compliance requirements, storing the data, all of that. And then what Alexander does is puts a container around this, a representation or a reference to that data, a cryptographic reference that can be then used in a Web3 space on chain. But as soon as there would be a question about, well, where's the data, who's holding it, and show it to me, it goes back to us.
Okay.
And I think probably my view is next 2-3 years, that's the way it's going to be.
Let me ask the question from different angle. Okay, we have a Web3, we have decentralized exchanges, and they all under the radar now that most of them they have to do the IML. Yes, onboard the clients, trace the transactions, because there is element of central party somehow. The question is, what we can suggest them as an idea solution where they need to look for new technology to be compliant in the future so they can still operate? Because we also discussed here during 5 days that and at the decentralized exchange session yesterday, the conclusion was some of the biggest will move towards the centralization, partial centralization to not lose their clients and to be regulated. But maybe we can find some balance here, not to be purely regulated like Coinbase, where I feel myself that I'm in the most, complicated banking relations, and even with UBS I don't have such problems with Coinbase. I always have to prove everything for them, and I think we need to find a better way where we can use zero knowledge proof, or just let's go make a round and discuss how we can help decentralized exchanges in the future, what they need to have to fully comply but still be more somehow decentralized. Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think so. My answer is simple: use credentials instead of identities. So, which means even for the exchanges, they just want to know that you fulfill some requirements, like KYCs, right? So, like you are not a citizen of a specific region. Like for collateralized lending and borrowing, you meet some requirements. For example, you have good reputation, you're an active trader, for example. And all those informations can be done via credentials. So as a end user, I just have to provide such kind of credentials to access these features. I don't have to provide my ultimate identities to do that. So as an end user, I still have fully control of my
okay, but that does not solve the IML requirements, IML regulatory requirements. So I think we need to identify all of the steps from the IML process and see which steps can be automated, as I said it before, and which not. And then I think the 90-95% of the flow will be able to do in a kind of algorithmic way. And in some cases, in some specific cases, an ML compliance officer, internal or from external organization, which will be used as a service, will be forced to open the data and to do some individual due diligence for the end customers.
We're working with a product, a solution that might provide that in the future once it's standardized. It's called Digital Social ID. And what they do is that they are creating a social score based on your behavior on-chain and off-chain. So there are certain things you can upload from starting from your, I don't know, bank account statements, maybe your work experience, CV, diplomas, as well as your on-chain activity, like what you do on-chain in terms of transactions, like borrowing, lending, and this taken into account creates a social score, which then this solution will be integrated, for example, in real-world businesses like, I don't know, car rental, where you don't have to anymore place a deposit because your social score is so high, and you can have some benefits and incentives around building up that reputation.
You said you work with Swiss ID, right? And the question is, I'm still trying to understand how we can bring it to the regulatory level. So they, like for video and online identification in Switzerland, we have for several years already guidance. And it was a very big improvement because now you don't need to in person come to the financial intermediary. You can do online verification, SumSub doing it perfectly, and then you will be onboarded. But how to, where we are with the regulators, yeah. So in France, you are quite in progress with the certification.
Yeah, the certification is like an initial step to, to start this conversation, to start providing this assurance, because administration in France is really, really old world. When I compare with Brazil, for example, where we have everything very well streamlined, we've been using biometrics everywhere, and I've been involved in all those projects before for many, many years. It's kind of a pity, but I'm happy that at least for Web3 and digital identity, they are taking some steps, and anything is definitive yet, but at least they are looking to it. They have specific teams inside the government to look into the solutions, but we don't have the final answer yet. And those certifications will, help to open the doors to the next step.
As always, it's behind education. If they realize how much it will save on administrative side, all this paperwork will be eliminated.
It depends on the countries. Some countries, they love the paperwork.
Yeah,
some they want to be,
they can put a lot in between in their pockets.
Why don't we make a statement for regulator now? Let's say each of us just make a short statement what we want them to hear in order to a bit move just maybe one step towards to have a digital identity and the regulation that you allowed.
Every government wants to have maximum taxpayers' money, Like, for example, in Estonia, it has been made through the digital identity so seamless that it's already pre-filled for you, and it takes one click and you get it done. And this is, like, I would say it's the 99% rate that all taxes are paid in the budget, in government's budget, and there is zero corruption. And I think it's an issue in many other countries where this could be increased, the tax money.
In Brazil, the discussion about an unified ID, because you have different documents to say that you are you, like on the federal, used to have on the federal level, on the state level, and many numbers, let's say. And the attempt to unify all this has been going on for decades. Right now I'm seeing like a really strong movement. They are moving forward, so they start integrating like with this digital identity, so you can use like your main ID on a federal level, like to access all the services you need. So your driver's license, everything, you can only use the digital version of it in your cell phone. That's a first step they've made, and now they are unifying those things better. So this is the first step. So it depends a lot about the country, how it's structured. Because a small country, or like here in Europe, it's easier. But if you are like in a country with billions or hundreds of millions of inhabitants with different instances, it's more complicated to convene everything. But when it starts top down, you start, moving faster.
And we had a digital ID during COVID. It was this QR code. Without it, you can't even go to the sport club, nowhere. And because if you're not vaccinated, so and then governments was very fast.
It was really fast to implement this in Europe, for sure.
It was amazing, yes. So we just got, and it was really working. You can't just make a fake. Yeah, if you don't have it, you stay home.
So if they are if the incentives are right, they are willing to do it like tomorrow, right? But there's something.
Okay.
They need a political, they need a
political will.
Yeah.
And
sure, Web3 is probably not. Like, if I were a regulator, would like enabling decentralized identity in Web3 applications be on the top of my agenda?
It's changing. It's changing.
So I don't know, Kai. What is your perspective? How we can? What we should tell them that they start to think about it? We are CRYPTO2030. We still have time, but let's give them a message.
I think believing in technology. I think that's the first thing. Then it needs also a wide adoption. So not only from the government, also from the users. So it feels like it's almost not a technical problem, but really a social problem. Like you have to promote the usage of this one. You have to make the users really feel that it's beneficial. It seems like any other changes in, I don't know, on the internet, for example, 2FA, those two-step verifications. I think originally people just find it inconvenient, hard to use, but now I think you're familiar with that. When you go online shopping, when you, log into a bank account, instead of just putting into your username and password, you have to confirm it additionally on your smartphone. So it's inconvenient, but that extra 1 or 2 seconds does dramatically increase the security level. So,
okay. I think we can ask audience about any questions, and if you have some ideas for us also, we can...
Can I make a statement as well? What
yes.
I want from the regulators. I think we need to convince them that Web3 and DeFi is not the same as Web2 with DeFi. And after they have the understand that the two worlds are not the same, they are similar and not the same, then we will be moving forward.
But in France, we have already department, which is Web3 department.
Yeah, it's a digital identity that they've been working a lot. The problem is when the challenge with the government is that sometimes when they look into something, they add way too many extra regulations on it. So I think that's why this dialogue with the community, with the Web3 and blockchain community this exchange needs to happen, to have something in the middle. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
I find it's quite interesting. You just talk about everybody, like it's already used in China. Like you have a credit system for yourself. You have a certain node. For example, I have over 530, so that's a high level. I can rent a car without putting any deposit. I just get it because I have a high credit, good one. This is by Alibaba. So basically everyone uses the payment system. So basically he knows what I buy and what kind of consumer behavior I have. So you will give me a certain node depending on your consumer behavior. So if you have a good and a reliable one, you get a high grade. I just find it's quite interesting that you talk about it now on the stage, because this is already used in China years ago. So
we can
It's easy to react that in places where government is able to do things on their own, they're able to move fast.
but this is not just a government action, because Alibaba is a private company.
But
So
then they own your data, right?
They own your
they
data.
own my data.
And we're
exactly.
talking about that we should own our data.
This is exactly my question. Like this kind of practice usage, just a rent a car or anything, like what Alibaba does. Now I'm questioning myself. Like in Europe, because I'm from China, I live in Europe for over 10 years. I realize that Europeans are quite sensible about their data. If anybody, any company, even government, they want some data from individuals, they're quite resistant to that. So I'm wondering, what is the how does the European, or I mean, it's quite a broad audience, how do you really think if a private company would own your data and save all this consumer behavior data and then give you a note and then give you a basically credit system, and then you can use this credit system for your any consumer actions? How do you feel it? Were you resisting?
But we have it here as well. I give you example, medical insurance. They will charge you less if you're really healthy and you do a lot of sport. They will give you some even premium sometime. It depends. It's just one of examples that we use your data, your health data, to give you the special rate for the insurance.
A traditional credit score is the same thing.
Yeah.
So it does exist, but it's true that in the West, obviously, there is much more tendency to distrust the government and try not to give them as much power. And then in some places, it's just taken as a normal thing, and people don't think about it. So I think it's a cultural preference on those dimensions, privacy versus.
It's also not only the government structure itself, the power of where is the power, decision power is.
What they can do or not.
So, I mean, I'm from a crypto bank, so I have clients who actually provide zero knowledge technology. What I'm questioning or find it interesting is, will the government accept this kind of services from a private company to basically help the government to identify someone without knowing the details of that one?
Hardly.
So is that possible? How is the process now?
That's what we spoke about, having a universal standardized product solutions accepted. Because right now, I don't think there is one Web3 solution which is accepted by traditional banks or governments. And this is what needs to be done. But it takes probably years until it is.
It certainly can be done. I don't see any technical problem with doing that. It's about political will and the desire to put the whole framework. Because actually, once you start thinking, you will need to have like a list of 150 different items that regulators need to think about. Access of police when they need it, stuff like that. So it won't be just pure form, totally decentralized. It will be decentralized and maybe accepted for common use, but there will have to be 100 backdoors for special cases. So that's why it will take a lot of time, but technically it can be done.
Yeah. No, exactly. And to bring this online information to the offline when they need it. So that's like a legal problem when you have a problem, as you said. So the police or all the legal framework needs access to the information of who that person is. If you are not dealing with fiat, if you're not dealing with, fiat, it's okay. You can think about it. But when you go back to things that can have legal implications, you can't yet.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
I personally, I'm definitely not a fan of keeping the data in a private company. I mean, I'm from China as well, so I understand your question and concerns. So I want to say that making the identities decentralized intrinsically minimizes the attack surface. I mean, if you keep it in a private company, there's a risk of data breach and leakage. Like, no matter how technically competent that company is, like Facebook, probably that's like 2 months ago, like 500 million users' records get leaked. So they don't want to leak that intentionally, I believe that, but still, so you can't stop hackers from doing a centralized attack, because for the hackers, it's easily to attack. And when I say easily, I don't mean technically difficult. I mean the reward it brings, the cost benefit, because it's all stored in a centralized place. There are millions of user records. If you manage to break that, I get those millions of records. I can do, identity selling, fraud, scam. So the reward is big. That's why they want to take home the risk to do that. And if you make it decentralized, which means it's distributed in the user's own wallets or, private keys, it's hard to, and less motivated for the attackers to really, guess or hack the identities. So,
but also these big platforms like Google, Facebook, and so on, they're incentivized because they are monetizing on our data.
Yeah.
And that's the whole ethos of Web3, is to gain back control as an individual.
Yeah, the only way, because data breach, they will happen. When we work in the infrastructure we are using, it's much more challenging. But in terms of identity, the only solution in that case is if when you validating someone, you are using liveness. Because even if the data that's out there is breached or the government has access to it, if you are using liveness, it's you can say that that person accessing it, no matter if you are disclosing the information or not, if you're using liveness, you can prove online and the data breach is void. And that's more or less what we've done with the banks and with the ATMs in Brazil. That was one of my projects. So it's still a traditional bank, but you can, in Brazil, you go to any ATM, you have at least 2 types of biometrics. Right, so and then you can validate your financial transactions. You can just using your biometrics. In that case, of course, you are fully identified, but it's the same concept. And we use liveness. So if someone steals your fingerprint or whatever, it won't work because the device is reading all the internal layers of your skin or your veins. So you need to be alive and you need to be you to do that. So unless you work on some kind of really well done liveness, and I'm not saying just like things that you can use fake AI to just say hi, move your head. That's the only thing you can. That's one of the solutions. But
it's a good because we have this regulation problem with the threshold for crypto, 1,000 Swiss francs, and it's FAT $1,000. And then ATM machines, we also have problems with providers of ATM machines, because actually you need to be very verified person who come to the ATM machine to take some cash in Bitcoin.
Yeah. In Brazil, you can use your biometrics.
I guess we should have it here as well.
Yeah, I can help.
Okay, so we still have a bit of time, and question, please.
Yeah, my point is, can you actually share what's going on and what is the next big thing in next 5 years beyond of probably now, and it's called like a synthetic digital identity, because 1 billion people unbanked and 1.7 without the identity. And it's look like the science GPT-4 and deepfakes. It's like this common fraud increasing 600 times. What do you think? It's like one big thing in next 5 years.
Let's have a sentence each. Yeah.
5 years is a very long time in crypto world.
Yeah,
indeed.
Who else wants to
I actually think, look, if regulation is finally coming, and I think always we just have to accept it, like whether that regulation is coming, and therefore the quicker it comes, the better for us all and for the market. So I kind of think the next 5 years, the big thing will be proper regulation of these things we've discussed, regulation of crypto, Web3, identity, not identity. I think that will open up the market the biggest. All of the problems you mentioned, they will remain, there will be new problems, and then new problems, and it's always a tug of war. But I think if the regulation comes and the governments effectively say, this is all at least legal, this is how you should do it, this is how you should pay taxes, this is how you should store it, process it, control it, then we can all sort of exhale, look at this and say, okay, let's build. Let's now build.
Yeah, I agree. Also, the regulations will be applied, and the whole Web3 industry will be forced to deal with that somehow. But I believe that the way for mass adoption, at least the mass adoption for the traditional finances.
Kai?
Yeah, I would also love to see wide adoption of those usage of digital identity. So either it's enforced by regulations, or there's, I don't know, it happens to be a killer app in the crypto field which actually attract non-crypto users to use that because people just find it useful, really protect their privacy. So either way, so I'm looking forward to see such a wide adoption.
Anna?
Yeah, I agree with the regulation, the standardization. That's what we are betting on, and it's ironical. It's a little bit ironic, but it's what it is right now. That's what we need. We need to have a common ground so we can build the next level of innovation.
I think for the next 5 years, it's just the hope that the regulators won't kill Web3.
Yeah.
There is always a way
That's
to do
the challenge.
things in a decentralized manner, not that you're forced into their way.
Yes, and we had only actually one regulator here. It was El Salvador regulator who came to participate actively all week. And I hope that next time when we talk about identity and Crypto 2030, we can have more regulators here as well. Let's discuss together, yes? And then it will be more like a mutual dialogue. At the moment, we're just discussing when we understand that without they educating them and without a will, it will be difficult to move to the next level. But this is the reality. Any more question? Last one.
Hi there. So I know that Web3 and digital identity is really important, right? So, and it really needs to flourish. So from an investment point of view, for instance, I'm quite curious, like, where is the revenue coming from? So for example, for Web2 on Fido, right? They actually charge financial institutions, right? To generate revenue, and financial institutions are incentivized to pay on Fido because it's regulated by government. So what about Web3 identity platforms? Where will the revenue come from?
Okay, developers of
I
Web3.
would say from each pull request of the data, there is a small transaction fee integrated in the smart contract.
Yeah, I would say like generation of such proofs, because we want to use credentials. Of course, the generation consumption of these credentials could be one point. And it could be composable identities, like what I mentioned. We are doing aggregating identities. So those aggregation service could be one point as well. Yeah, and the computation, it could be confidential, so which means it could be executed in a specific environment, for example, trusted execution environment. And such computation could be like, bring some revenues, which means you have to pay to use such services.
Yeah, I agree. It will be some onboarding fee and the kind of recurrent revenue, which will be through the protocol fees, per request fees, or whatever. So we are expecting to get in between $1 and $10 per year per customer, per end customer.
I don't think there's a clear answer. It will be for sure monetized somehow. Somebody will have to pay. Unlikely that it will be the actual user, the individual paying, because usually if they onboarding somewhere, therefore there is somebody that needs them onboarded. It is incentivized to pay for that onboarding as part of their customer acquisition cost to make the profit going down the line. So, yeah, I'm not too much worried about if there's a viable business case for a Web3 service, then there will be economics to pay for the onboarding part. And the good part, if you make it if it's decentralized and reusable multiple times, you actually can bring the cost of that verification quite a bit down. Versus right now, you know, let's say the same user onboards with multiple services, each of them pays somebody like us or somebody like Amphita for each of that onboarding. So actually lots of waste in the sense.
Yeah, what we do, we have a blockchain as a service that's subscription-based, a freemium business model. That's how we work with our solutions.
And we have a solution built on Partisia where users can upload their data or choose which data they want to expose. I mean, it's always kept private, but basically they sell the use of the data, not the data itself. And then this could be used and consolidated for clinical researches or market researches. So they even get monetized on that. So they can reward it for that.